Hello, everybody. Another episode of William's Technique with Annika here. Today we're going to be going over the 8 learning techniques. Last time I was trying to stream, the audio got completely off. So, I'm not sure if this is going or not, honestly. Great. Thanks, YouTube, for being extremely reliable in your streaming. It's great. Absolutely lovely. Oh, it's been going. Alright, never mind. Anyway. I'm just gonna check if the audio is normal. Okay, yeah, it is. Alright. Anyway, so today we're learning about the 8 different learning techniques. You can use these for basically anything that you're learning. It doesn't have to be for math or physics, but it's especially useful in math or physics because mostly in math or physics courses, they tend to teach the mathematical or logical type of technique where they just kind of like lay out the steps, lay out the algorithm, and then you're expected to understand everything outside of that. So, we're going to go over what each learning technique is like, and then hopefully you'll be able to identify yourself. You know, maybe you're a combination of 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, you can't be a combination of 1. Maybe you're a combination of 2, 3, or 4, or maybe all of them. Maybe you're just 1. So we'll go over what are the signs of, the different types of learners so you can figure it out. So anyway, the first one is the linguistic learner. These people like to listen to people talk. They also like to read and then take notes. They like to take or copy notes as well, and then maybe even rewrite it in their own words. Sometimes they'll look at their notes and then they'll try and teach it to their dog or their mom or something, to really like get the linguistic part out of it and just fully understand what's going on. These people tend to think with an inner monologue, so you probably know what that is. They just think words as thoughts. So, next one is the Naturalist Learner. I'm not entirely sure if this one really is, a thing by itself. I think other types of learning techniques can be combined with this one, but I don't really think this one really stands alone because it's not really a thought algorithm, if that makes sense. Because with linguistic learners, you have the inner monologue. With visual learners, you have, they obviously visualize things. So this is more of like what kind of setting, I guess, you like to be in when you're learning. A lot of people like to be outside. They like to be in the sun. Maybe they like to take a break and brush their hands through the grass or maybe look at some bugs. They tend to prefer freedom when they're learning, so they don't like to be taught one specific thing and then that's it. They like to have the freedom to kind of learn whatever they want. A lot of unschooled kids are naturalist learners, mainly because I think they prefer the freedom, and their parents allow them the freedom to learn whatever they want. But also because unschooled kids tend to be outside more in regards to, like farming or playing outside, and that's how they learn different things. They just like notice things outside and make sense of it. So that's the naturalist learner. Next one is the musical or rhythmic learner. They tend to learn better when there's background music going, or They remember things better when it has melody, like the quadratic equation jingle. You probably know what that is. Sometimes they'll play an instrument, and so they'll study first and then they'll play an instrument. And as they're playing an instrument, they'll sort of make sense of things that they just studied subconsciously. So, and then they'll come back to whatever they were learning and be like, oh, this makes sense now. It also works to break up information for them, kind of how musical notes are broken up with beats, or I'm not sure what they call the time measure things. I think that's what I'm not sure. But you know, it's 4/4, and then there's like that section. There's like, you can have 4 beats, and then there's the next. Yeah, so breaking up information helps them. So does rhyming. So rhyming is sort of musical and poetic, and it has a rhythm to it. So rhyming helps these kinds of learners to learn what they need to learn. A kinesthetic learner is someone who likes to be hands-on with things. They like to, build things or experiment or maybe even draw. Usually this is pretty useful in science, mainly if you're doing a physics experiment. It's usually hands-on, especially if you're in a lab class or in a chemistry lab. These learners tend to learn the best when they're in the lab doing it. Maybe in a group or maybe by themselves, but they tend to figure these things out. They tend to figure out what they need to figure out when they're actually doing it, because they see that it's applicable. They see that it's either working or not working. So that's the kinesthetic learner. The visual or the spatial learner are kids or students, who kind of think visually. They can picture things in their heads. They can rotate objects, see colors in their minds. Sometimes they'll pick a random object in a room and attach like an abstract concept to it. And then they'll pick another object and do the same thing with a different concept as well, and then be thinking about something, and then maybe they'll look at the object and they'll remember, oh yeah, the concept, and then they like make connections in their head, and they'll see the other object and like, oh, another concept, and then they make the connection. So sometimes visual learners tend to think like that. They also do well with symbols, so they can attach pictorial meaning to symbols, which might be pretty useful in math, because math can be pretty visual if you really put your mind to it. If you put an interest to it, though, it becomes obviously more interesting as you put an interest to it, and it becomes easier to process because your brain already thought of that before. So, next learner is the logical or mathematical learner. These types of students like steps and procedures, why or how something works, if-then statements. Numbers and quantities tend to make sense to them. So do algebraic procedures. These students tend to think about things in sort of algorithms, so maybe they'll look at patterns and they'll see the pattern, and that is logical to them, so it makes sense. Or they'll see how a procedure in math or anything really is done, and then they'll say, oh, this is the whole algorithm of it, so this is logical, this is mathematical, it's algebraic, it's making sense to me. That's pretty much how a logical or mathematical learner thinks about things, and to teach them is to teach them essentially in a way that is similar to how they think. That's with every type of learner, but I just thought I'd make that clear. So then the interpersonal learner is someone who likes to conversationally talk about things and learn from it. So they like to say something, the other person responds conversationally, and then they'll ask a question, the other person answers, then the other person asks a question, and then they'll answer, and so on and so forth, kind of just like in a regular conversation. And throughout the conversation, the ideas kind of clarify themselves in their minds, and it starts to make sense with them. So socializing is, I think, very important in learning. Unfortunately, in classrooms, well, maybe not here in America, but when I lived in Hungary, we didn't really do much socializing during class. Like, we didn't do projects or we didn't do skits and stuff like that, what they do here. We would mostly just learn and then have, like 15-20 minute breaks and then talk to each other. But we wouldn't talk about school. That would be boring. So uncool. I was like 6th grade. Anyway, so the last one is the intrapersonal learner. These people tend to learn best in solitude. What I notice with intrapersonal learners is they tend to get anxious during like a tutoring session or maybe during class, or generally if they're learning in front of someone else. They, I think, tend to feel judged if they don't necessarily get the concept right at first, or if they're not able to ask a question fast enough. These people tend to be very deep thinkers, so they tend to think a lot before they speak, or they'll think a lot about something and then it'll subconsciously go through their mind and then consciously go through their mind, and then anyway, so usually they tend to be other types of learners too, like maybe a mathematical learner or a visual learner, as well as an interpersonal learner. The main thing that they do is they just figure things out by themselves. Sometimes they don't like it when other people figure things out for them. Sometimes they don't like to be asked questions, or they're too afraid maybe to ask questions and they just rather look it up by themselves because they learn it better anyway. So, yeah, that's the last one. So, yeah, maybe leave a comment below to see which one you might be. You can obviously be a combination of a couple or just one. Maybe leave a comment. I'd be interested to see which one you are. I might leave a comment myself, I don't know. But yeah, so that's what Williams' technique kind of focuses on, is just teaching these different types of learning techniques and then interweaving it with different interests specifically for the tutor, the student itself, the student themselves. Sorry, English is gone. I haven't slept in a day. So they interweave. So what we do is we interweave the different learning techniques that the student has, and then we take their interests, tie that together so that they have a base of what they're about to learn, and then we tie in the math or physics topics in a way that they can fall back onto their mental schemas about, their interests, and then they can think about math with that in their own thought pattern that they're very well used to and they've been doing maybe since birth, maybe early childhood, maybe since they started school. Really depends. So yeah, I guess that's it for today. Please like and share. Maybe sign up for a tutoring session. That'd be pretty cool. Yeah, have a good rest of your day. Bye.